Hello, biology students. This week's announcement is going to be a little bit different because, for one thing, you can't see my face because I have some material to go over. And I find that this week's material is a little bit more difficult, and you have so many things to do this week that I wanted to give you an overview of the information that's coming at you this week, so that hopefully you can get through it and get on with your assignments. So let's talk about what you did last week. So last week was all about classification, taxonomy, phylogenetic trees, and of course, bacteria, my favorite, and antibiotic resistance. Can't wait to read everything that you have written from last week, and I can't wait to look at your topics that you've chosen. I will get to that grading as soon as I can. I'm out of town right now, but I will get to that just as soon as I can. Okay, so what's coming up for this week? You need to read 3 chapters, 6, 7, and 8. And this is, to me, some of the most difficult information to get through as a biology student because it's a lot of chemistry and it's very detailed. And it seems like, what exactly is the point of all of this? And so that's why I'm doing the video this week the way that I am. Make sure that you read the Module 4 overview and everything that's required this week because there's a lot, and watch videos. The discussion board postings. You're going to be comparing photosynthesis and cellular respiration processes, and you're trying to figure out whether they are opposite, whether they are complementary, or both. And I'll give you a hint, it's probably that last answer, just saying. So, and hopefully this video will help you with a little bit of that. And also you'll be talking about autotrophs, which are, of course, that means self-feeders. And so that would be anything that does photosynthesis, and are they the foundation of ecosystems? Your journal entry this week is about aerobic versus anaerobic respiration processes, the ancientness, if that's a word, of glycolysis, the antiquity, I guess, of glycolysis, and also biofuels. And then another really important thing that's coming up this week is that 3rd section of your final project. So you've got a lot of work to do, which is why I'm trying to help clarify the information that's coming along this week. Okay, so I'm going to talk about what you're reading about in chapters 6, 7, and 8. And I want to give you the big picture instead of all the little minutiae that are in those chapters to help you understand why this is important. Life. What is biology? The study of life. So life requires chemical reactions to occur. We call chemical reactions metabolism. And so chapter 6 is all about metabolism. Metabolism means all the chemical reactions that occur in a cell or in an organism. And the reason that these chemical reactions take place is to build molecules that you need and to break down food molecules to give you energy. These chemical reactions require energy. Energy in the form of ATP. ATP is the most universal energy molecule in all of life. Every living being, every organism requires ATP to run all of their chemical reactions. Here's a picture of ATP. Remember how important a molecule it is. So it stands for adenosine triphosphate. Those 3 phosphate groups held on to the ATP molecule are very important. When these bonds are broken, that I'm pointing to right here, one phosphate group is removed and then a second one can be removed, which would end up with adenosine monophosphate. When these phosphate groups are removed, then high energy is released, a good bit of energy, and that energy is used by enzymes to do work. And that's what's so important about this molecule. The energy that's stored in those bonds is released and can be used to do work. So then there's a discussion about enzymes. Here's a picture of the amylase enzyme. It just looks like a big blob, and I do realize that. And that's what enzymes look like. They're called globular because they look like globs. But enzymes do work. So let's talk about them. Enzymes have very specific jobs that they do. They carry out a single chemical reaction. Enzymes are really simple. They either make or break chemical bonds. That's what they do, but they only have one specific job to do. There are thousands of enzymes per cell. They're what drive all the chemical reactions because they do the work in the chemical reactions. They run chemical reactions. I just said that. Sorry about that. And another important thing about enzymes is that the code for making them is found in DNA. And that's why when you're an organism, you have so much DNA. Because you have to have the code in your DNA for making all the enzymes that you need to run all the chemistry in your cells. So, of course, we're going to cover this when we cover the genetic section in the course. All right. Then Chapter 7 is all about catabolism, the breakdown of food. And the first part of this chapter is about aerobic respiration. So what is aerobic respiration? It's a chemical process. It's a biochemical pathway, which is a set of chemical reactions that happen in a step-by-step fashion, where glucose is broken down, and the whole point of breaking down glucose is to produce ATP. Why do you need ATP? To release energy so that enzymes can do their work. Where does aerobic respiration take place? It happens in mitochondria in eukaryotes, which is why mitochondria are so important, and it happens at the plasma membrane in bacteria. Aerobic respiration begins with a pathway. Metabolic pathway is what it's called in your textbook, but it also can be called biochemical pathway. It begins with a step-by-step process called glycolysis. And this is common to aerobic respiration, fermentation, and anaerobic respiration. So glucose is broken down in a step-by-step fashion, and you make more and more energy molecules. The problem is that you don't just make ATPs. You make some other energy molecules, NADH and FADH2. And the problem with these two high energy molecules is that the energy can't be released from them to enzymes to do their work. So you'll notice at the end of aerobic respiration, there's an explanation of the electron transport chain followed by something called chemiosmosis. So what the heck is all that about? Those energy-rich molecules, NADH and FADH2, those molecules are then used to make more ATPs. So the whole purpose of aerobic respiration, go to that number one bullet, is to break down glucose and produce ATP. When we don't make the correct energy molecules, there has to be another process where those molecules, the energy in those molecules is converted to ATPs. All right, and then the chapter covers fermentation and anaerobic respiration. As I said before, they both begin with glycolysis. So if all the catabolic or breaking down of food processes begin with glycolysis, it tells you that that is a very ancient chemical reaction. All organisms use glycolysis. So it has been around for a very long time, since the beginning of life. Fermentation and anaerobic respiration both occur without oxygen. And that's important. Why is oxygen so important to aerobic respiration? Because it causes the very efficient turnover of the energy and glucose into ATPs. If you don't use oxygen as what's called the final electron acceptor, you don't have as much efficiency. So this results in slower growth because you produce less ATPs from your glucose. That's why any organism that does any of these anaerobic catabolic reactions will grow slowly. You will find this in very tiny organisms like bacteria. People could never be anaerobic. We just have so many cells and so much biochemistry going on at one time. We have to be very efficient. And so we do aerobic respiration. And with these anaerobic processes, you produce different waste products. With aerobic respiration, you make CO2 molecules as waste and water as waste. All right, and then finally, that 8th chapter is all about photosynthesis. And a lot of people get bogged down in photosynthesis too because there are lots of reactions that happen that cause photosynthesis to happen. Let's remember the purpose of photosynthesis, to produce food in the form of glucose using light energy. Photosynthesis and its chemical reactions are divided into 2 sets of reactions. The first reactions are called light dependent. That means that they depend on light in order for this to occur. There's the use of pigments, chlorophylls, A and B, and accessory pigments, the yellow and orange pigments. And they act sort of like antennae to pick up the energy from the sun and then use that energy to make energy molecules that can run the production of glucose. So these pigments, the chlorophylls and the other accessory pigments, are very similar to solar panels that you see. So solar panels can take the energy from sunlight and transform that energy into electricity, and that's exactly what these pigments do. Then we have the Calvin cycle, which is light independent. You do not have to have light for the Calvin cycle to occur. The Calvin cycle is where glucose is made, because remember, the purpose of photosynthesis is to produce food, glucose, using light energy. So how does the Calvin cycle work? You use a bunch of CO2 molecules, carbon dioxide. You make some glucose. How? You have to use all those energy molecules that you made in the light-dependent reactions. And the waste product is oxygen gas. So hopefully this overview will help you get through those chapters 6, 7, and 8. As always, if you have any questions, if you need clarification, if you just want to talk to somebody because you're getting bogged down in all of this, please feel free to email me or call me. If you call me on my phone, leave me a message and I'll call you back. Email me anytime you want. I'm always looking at my email. m.sigmon@SNHU. Wow, it's early. m.sigmon@snhu.edu. You know that. So please feel free to contact me. I'm here to help you. Have a good week. Bye.